After one whole year of dubious allegations, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has finally acknowledged that he has not provided India with concrete proof regarding the death of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar on Canadian soil while testifying before the public inquiry into foreign interference in federal electoral processes and democratic institutions in Ottawa. Since then, the Ministry of External Affairs of India has pointed out that at least 26 extradition requests from the Indian side sent over the last decade or more that still remain pending with the Canadian authorities. The question that arises is, how do we break the Khalistani support system in Canada? Before we begin this conversation, let's quickly take a look at the Khalistani terrorists who are still residing in Canada and their terror activities continue. These are names that have been pointed out by the Indian government on a number of occasions in the past as well. I'm going to go over to the big screen and try and tell you exactly who they are and what kind of custodianship they are in fact being benefited by the Canadian government. All right, Hardeep Gill, he belongs to the terror group KTF. He lives in Surrey. He in fact is a prominent member of the community in Surrey. He goes around, he walks around, he goes to the mall, he goes around driving his car, but there is no action being taken against him because the Canadians believe that there is not ample proof against him. The KTF group has been involved in terror financing, cross-border smuggling of drugs and weapons from Pakistan. There have been indications of getting support from the ISI as well. And of course, Goldie Brar, a name which became immensely popular after Sidhu Moosewala's murder, is also somebody who's living very comfortably in Canada. He belongs to the Babbar Khalsa, a group that of course was created in the 1980s. In fact, India issued an Interpol red notice against him in June of 2022. The Canadians did nothing about it. In fact, they continue to shelter these enemies of the state. And when India has tried to get them back to Indian borders, the Canadians have not cooperated. And that is, the double standards that they have been living with. Rinku Bila, he also belongs to the KZF. He lives in Surrey. He's involved in 25 criminal cases, including murder, attempt to murder, and extortion. He's obviously sheltered by the Canadians. He's been given, the kind of atmosphere that will only allow him to create more unnecessary evil and unleash it towards India. And of course, this is something which the Indian government has raised concern when it comes to Rinku Bila, but no action has been taken. None of those summons, if you may call it, have been responded to. He continues to reside in Canada and he continues to plot against India, and of course he is an enemy of the state. There have been established reports of Rinku Bila also being in touch with the ISI operatives. He's also in fact tied to a number of financial crimes which lead authorities to ISI as well. Raman Judge, he also currently lives in Surrey. He's involved in 10 criminal cases, including murder, attempt to murder, and extortion as well. And now these criminals in fact have ganged up against India. They continue to in fact put pressure on the Canadian government, show us in the bad light, and the Canadians are naive enough, for the lack of a better word, that they continue to believe these people against whom India has furnished ample evidence. Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who belongs to the Babbar Khalsa, he also is residing in Canada at this point in time. He was instrumental behind 2 RPG terror attacks on Punjab police, proof of which had been submitted to the Trudeau government, but they chose to do nothing about it. And this is something which obviously the Indian authorities made very, very clear, that these people have left a trail of evidence which was of course shared like we did in 26/11 to Pakistan, but nothing was done. In fact, in Pakistan, the evidence was submitted into court. It's unfortunate that nothing became of it, but the Canadians will not even acknowledge the evidence that India has facilitated. Gurpinder Singh, he belongs to KZF. He lives in British Columbia. He has to plot to assassinate on the instructions of Paramjeet Singh Pamma, another declared terrorist who continue to plot against India. Of course, nothing has been done against this person as well. And why this apathy towards the enemies of India? Why this sheltering towards people who have declared publicly that they do not want to have a negotiation with India. They do not want to, in fact, reason with India. All they want to do is demean India and derail India's democratic process. We'll talk about this with our guest. Joining us on the show at this point in time is Mr. Mahesh Sachdev, former diplomat. Mr. Rabinder Sachdev, international affairs expert, also joins us on the broadcast. Sumit Peer, senior political commentator, with us on the show as well. Dr. Swasti Rao, also with us on the broadcast to talk more about this. She is with the Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defence Studies and Analysis. So, Sumit, I'm going to begin with you. These names that I have spoken of and these terrorists, as rightly they should be called terrorists, have been getting shelter from the Canadians. Had they done something on American soil, or had they done something, in Europe, the treatment that Canada would have given them would have been absolutely different. And that this is a thought which is not only acceptable to them, but it is palpably clear that this is the kind of ill will that Canada has shown by not admitting to the fact that the evidence that India has provided, Sumit Peer, bears credence. It is important, it is corroborated. Why this attitude towards India, Sumit Peer? What have we done to Canada, that they have to behave like this with us? There are other countries that India has had problems with, including a number of countries in the Middle East who have actually floundered human rights violations. And India had to take it up, in court, at the International Court of Justice also. But, the relationship did not go so sour. What is it about Canada that it's come to this?
Vinny, thank you for having me on your show. Look, Canada suffers from that white man's arrogance because it believes technically it is the 52nd state of United States of America, and it believes it's a part of the G7 member club, and it can do whatever they want to have. There's a time when people start behaving that I am the law, I set the parameters. There's one set of law for white people, one set of law for brown people, and one set of law for black people. And these Indians will dictate them what to do, what not to do. It is a given fact that Canada has been giving political patronage to these terrorists for decades now. And from his father to son, the things continue. And let me tell you, the new party, his opponents, if you look at their press release, they're almost talking of the similar lines. So there's not a lot of change in the Canada, and Canada does a lot of things which Americans want them to do. The point here is very simple, Vineet. When it's a classical case, here you have some weird intel and you're putting all kinds of allegations on India, including Indian Prime Minister, Home Minister, and the NSA. And here we have given you proofs for around a decade, and you are taking to look otherwise, because what you think is what Dr. Jaishankar rightly says. Some the people in the Europe think that their problem is world's problem, and world's problem is not their problem. The Canada is under this hallucination wherein they think that Canada's problem is India's problem, and India's problem is not Canada's problem. That is the thing they think. But they have forgotten this is the India of 2024. It's the India of Modi. Things have changed. It's not what it used to be 30, 40 years back. Things have completely changed here. Now the point here is, if you look at 29, I think there are 29 extradition requests which you have given them. You have not given anybody. The so-called alleged gang of Lawrence Bishnoi, the gang members are in Canada, you have not extradited them. So if the gang members are there, you are not giving extradition requests. How the hell are you blaming us for the gang war which is happening within your country? How can I be responsible for something which you are not cooperating with me for? And when you talk of I only had a fluke, I only had an imagination that they can be involved, but didn't your Canadian mounted police, whatever you call them, and your intelligence tell you that these people are terrorists, they are living in your country? Don't you know that you are not giving them extradition for last 10 years? Don't you know that you are giving them political patronage? Don't you know that after giving so much of evidence from India, you are chosen to keep them on their land, and if you are chosen to keep them on your land, when they cause a ruckus and mayhem to hide your incompetencies, you are trying to blame it on India, trying to blame it on everybody. If Nijjar was such a kind-hearted gentleman, why was he on no-fly list of Canada? Why was he on no-fly list of America? Why is he seen with AK-47? Why had he gone for a training in Pakistan? Why was he training people in Canada? Why did you seize his assets in Canada? So he was such a nice gentleman. So When gang wars happen and things go out of the control and you have an incompetent regime, what do? They want to blame everybody else except themselves. He will not say that he and his father had a policy of keeping these terrorists and here giving the political patronage. At the time of IC, at the time of Kanishka, we told them what is going to happen. Even after the Kanishka happened, did they extradite the people? Did they punish the people? No. What happened to the killers of Ripudaman Singh ji? What happened to the killers of Baloch girl? What happened to the so many people who got killed in Canada by ISI and FSS? What is happening to do? Your real estate is controlled by China. Your law and order is practically at the mercy of ISI. And with these Chinese establishment, there is prostitution, there is gambling, there is fentanyl, everything is happening. And out of all the problems and disasters in the whole world, you are gone after a Nijjar, a gun, a plumber with a AK-47 in his hand, and you are trying to find justice for him. I think you are a prince of lost paradise. You should write a book and you will do better than J.K. Rowling, and you should be the hero. And you can have the Jagmeet Singh as a sidekick, and you can have an imaginary villain which can be Lawrence Bishnoi. I'm telling you, Vineet, it will be a super hit. J.K. Rowling will have a run for her money because it will be the super Harry Potter. We can call it Trudeaunomics or Trudeau something. That is what his future is. Write a fiction novel, become a fiction writer. You are not good enough for politics, and watch your words when you
Okay.
talk about
Let me
India.
let me also rope in Mr. Mahesh Sachdev, former diplomat, into this conversation. Mr. Sachdev, how much of a damage has Canada done, not only to India but also to the world, when it comes to terror dissemination?
I think it has damaged itself more. It has damaged its own credibility. And Canada's ranking as a law-abiding country has taken a hit. Make no mistake, this is not just a bilateral matter. Canada is being watched, being tested, and I think it's been found wanting. India is not alone. There are Iranian dissidents, there are Bangladeshis who killed Sheikh Mujib, who were given asylum in Canada. There are even Pakistanis, and I can go on and on. Chinese, it's a favorite. Vancouver is a Chinese city. Toronto is a Chinese city, as Sumit just now said. Now, Canada has damaged itself, but it's also a vote bank politics that has been often commented about. Trudeau is a minority government as of last month, when National Democratic Party of Gurmail Singh has withdrawn its support, and the next elections are due in April. So, what does a minority prime minister do 6 months before the next elections? He finds ruses, he finds excuses, and he finds external enemies. This is what Mr. Trudeau has been doing. Economy is not doing too well. There are other issues that have become important for the voters. So he has to find an external enemy. And India, 9,000 or 10,000 kilometers away, is a convenient bogey to talk about. But then, how does it help Canada? Whole world is salivating at India's prospects. Engaging India is important for Canada in terms of it's an oil and gas exporter. It has a thriving civil aviation industry which wants to look at world's fastest civil aviation market in India. There are food and other related issues, and 2.8 million Indian origin people require their own connectivity with India in terms of commerce, in terms of business. They could have acted as a bridge back, connecting India and Canada together. Two countries were at the verge of signing a free trade agreement before this Nijjar business took off last year. Now, current episode is quite bizarre. The issues were sort of being discussed, talked about. Suddenly last week, Canada somehow woke up like a bear in hibernation in an icy cave, and then the Prime Minister goes ballistic. talking about India, talking about sovereignty and territorial integrity and law, rule of law, etc., etc. Those nice buzzwords.
All right.
Uh, what Canada does elsewhere is not to be talked about, as
Yeah,
Sumit has
you're absolutely right. Now,
articulated pretty well.
you're absolutely right, sir. And Swasti, there has been a damage to India's reputation. There has been irrevocable damage to what India stands for. How is Canada supposed to make up for this? They obviously need to apologize for putting all these stall blames on us without any evidence. And secondly, like Sumit also said, this seems to be a white man's disorder that they're suffering from. What is the recourse for India? We've handled them diplomatically, wonderfully, but there is a line that needs to be drawn now. So you're muted, Swasti.
If you'd like me to sort of answer something which has really not been discussed, because I think all relevant points have basically been discussed so far in the last 2-3 years since it began. But yes, with respect to India's the reputational damage to India. See, in my opinion, I don't think there is a reputational damage to India, for the very reason that I think Trudeau is making a kind of a fool of himself by first saying in his parliament that he has irrefutable evidence against India and against all the claims he made. And finally, he yesterday at a presser perhaps said that he does not really have solid evidence, but he has what is referred to as intelligence, and that to shared intelligence. So I think he's making a kind of a mockery of this own situation, which is out there for everybody to see. So I don't think it is a kind of a damage to India. I would be of the opinion that it is in fact a damage to Canada. And I think we have already spoken about the angle of domestic politics and his falling approval ratings. My position is that I think we should be looking at the post-Trudeau Canada. It is very, very clear. If you see the kind of rebuttal that Trudeau has got from his own opposition leader, I think a lot of things would be clear. He only today released a message, a public message, where he asked Justin Trudeau to release the names of all the MPs that, according to him, have collaborated with the foreign interference, so-called, but then he has not done it. And then if you go through that public rebuttal, you will see that, he comes up with points after points where he actually says how systematically Justin Trudeau has been lying. So on the one hand, you see that all this will actually damage Canada's reputation for many, many reasons. Now, very quickly, I still wish to make one point, which is that, I think sooner than later, while of course I'm also of the opinion that when you look at Canada and when you look at the Khalistani menace in the Canadian politics, you do see that whether it's the Liberals or the Conservatives, most of these parties have been mollycoddling the Khalistanis. It's there, and we've seen that. But having said that, Trudeau has taken it tad too far. I'd just like to, tell you something which is not usually discussed, is that in December 2018, Canada released its annual public report on the terrorist threat to Canada. And in that public report, which was released in December 2018, they had mentioned Sikh extremism and Khalistan for the first time. But you know what then Trudeau did? Why? Because he wanted to then get cozy with the Khalistanis. After there was backlash from Sikh groups and after all that resistance, that the government faced, the Trudeau government released a revised report in April of 2019, which is almost 4 months after the original report came out, where they actually omitted any mention of the Sikh extremism. So what I'm saying is that these things are getting very, very clear. Lately, we've been seeing that the Indian media has also been engaging, this Canadian authors and Canadian journalists who are also full of a lot of things to tell about Justin Trudeau's style of politics. So it's very clear. Now, just two more things beneath from my side. One is that we have to be mindful that what Justin Trudeau years have done, and he's probably going to be in power for almost 9 years and all that. So it's almost a decade of damage, right? What he has done and what he has successfully done is that this man has conflated the Sikh community in Canada as being Khalistanis or being Khalistani supporters, which is not the case. More than 7 lakh Sikhs actually live in Canada, and a very tiny fraction of them have been Khalistanis. So I think that is something that the next government, if they are serious about mending ties, not just with India, but also with the larger world and winning back some credibility as a government, I
Right.
think this is something that they have to look at. Okay, this false conflation. That's one. The other thing is about all the white man's burden and all that. Let me also remind everybody here is that if you remember today, when Italy and India have such great relations because of the political will and all the geopolitical and geostrategic convergence in trade, defense, and Indo-Pacific strategy, it was only less than 10 years ago, or about 10 years ago, when this entire relationship was mired with controversies and with problems, right? I mean, there was a case where 2 Indian fishermen were killed by Italians, and then there was the Augusta Westland allegations, right? And for many years we had our bilateral relations in freeze. But then what happened? Ultimately, in 2018, the work to repair the ties started when our then External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj actually led an official delegation. And finally, we have today what we refer to as the Melody, bonhomie, which is Prime Minister Modi and Giorgia Meloni of Italy. So what I'm trying to say is that I think it would be a very sweeping kind of a remark to sort of say that, oh, it's a white man's burden in Canada, things like this, and they are always forever trying to destabilize India. I mean, are they really in a position to destabilize India? I mean, here is a country where, if you look at the Five Eyes, the much talked about Five Eyes, you see that out of those Five Eyes, 3 countries,
All right.
I mean, US, Australia, and UK have already a 2+2 mechanism with India. There's so much convergence. They have not really. They have said that yes, rule of law should prevail, but they have not really come out to berate India because their interest lies in the Indo-Pacific. So I don't think Canada really is in a position, if they at all think they are in a position to damage anything, they are certainly delusional, Vineet. And
Okay.
like I
All
said,
right.
that we could be looking at the post-Trudeau era and work towards that.
All right. Okay. Mr. Sajdev, the post-Trudeau era is obviously something which is imminent, considering the fact that his ratings have plummeted in the last few months as well. Is that going to be instrumental in improving relationship between India and Canada? And how quickly can this damage be forgotten once there's a change of guard?
I
One to
think it's
this
a.
point.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Mr.
Sorry,
Rabinder
Mr.
Sajdev, that's for
Sajdev,
you. Yeah, Mr. Rabinder Sajdev, that's for you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. No, fair enough. Okay, one, post-Trudeau Canada, I'm not very hopeful of that also, because the Conservatives also, as I think all of our colleagues here are saying, they have also been, warm and sympathizing. In fact, the Conservatives, they have 2 deputy leaders in the parliament. One is a lady and another, this guy, Tim Uppal. Pierre is the leader. And on September 18th or 19th, whenever the discussion happened last year when Trudeau made the allegations, the deputy leader, Tim Uppal, said that, this is an assassination. I'm just coming back from Bhai Nijjar's home. I've met his son, etc., etc. So clearly indicating, his soft attitudes there. But yes, maybe it'll be less it'll be less tilting as compared to Trudeau. But the other thing which I want to say, so there's no hope, honestly, very unfortunately, and this is a more systemic problem. I would beg to say that, compared to Italy and India, yeah, that's a great example. But here you see the difference is the diaspora is there. There's a large number of diaspora, and perhaps several of them are getting, moving in one direction, that whole public opinion thing there. But coming back, what I see, and in fact, we put out a press release today, is that Trudeau, this on 18th of September, alleged against India this explosive allegation because of what I call a China gate. Point is, in 2019 and 21, there was Chinese interference. There were reports of that. The intelligence reports were kind of not going anywhere. Trudeau had benefited. Right. This whole thing came out as a scandal. The Globe and Mail in early of last year broke that story, and due to which there's a commission ongoing right now. Correct. So that had severely damaged Trudeau's reputation within the country as being, either sleeping on the job or being complicit or incompetent with regards to national security, right? So that has been the trend which has been building up there. Now, in September, when Trudeau went back from Delhi after the G20, in that week, they came to know his office that the Globe and Mail is coming out with another story, this time about Nijjar. and the killing of Nijjar and what the Canadian intelligence is finding. Now, this was, I think, a critical moment for Trudeau. He thought that if this story comes out, and his office contacted Globe and Mail and told them to delay the story, they disagreed. I think his perspective was that if this story comes out, it'll be another nail in my coffin as being, ineffective, incompetent in terms of national security. What he did to deflect attention from his weakness as a weak leader who was not strong on national security, the China Gate scandal, he raised the bogey of the Nijjar killing to a large extent. What was the need for him to talk about this on the floor of the parliament? The Nijjar inquiry on 18th could have been, conducted by some police commissioner, could have been done by Trudeau himself also somewhere outside. He did it in the Canadian parliament because the allegation against him was that in China Gate, he was not being honest and transparent with the parliament because he was saying the information is very sensitive about Canada, we cannot reveal it, right? So, to counter that perception and to, fortify his credentials as being strong on, national security, it is my thesis that he chose to and he decided to, raise the bogey, whatever, there was some investigation going on, sure, Nijjar killing, must have been. He raised this bogey to an explosive level against India. So I think the root cause of this crisis, other than, of course, he has been overall soft, he has not been cooperating or not seen the troubles or the pain that we have in India with respect to Khalistani and the terrorists in the list that you put out. But I think in this specific case, he took a conscious decision to raise the bogey and to elevate, to amplify the India fear in the eyes of his countrymen so that he could say, you know what, I am alert on the job, I am very much alert on our national security, and look here, I am being absolutely transparent with you, my parliamentarians. Because the criticism he'd been having and has been having was that he was not even, the select committees were not getting any information from the Trudeau administration. And by the way, that is the inquiry which has been set up and wherein yesterday he testified, that's the inquiry, one-person inquiry, which is investigating into foreign interferences. It started with China, but now in that inquiry, they've also added India, they've added Iran, they've added Russia. That's separate. So my bottom line thesis is that, and we put out a case on this, that this is what it seems to be if I connect the dots. He is diverting his weakness, his attention.
That's exactly what I said some minutes ago as well, that this is all a ploy, a big elaborate plan and ploy to deflect from the real issues that are plaguing Canada at this point in time. We've run out of time. I appreciate everybody who joined and shared their insights.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.